Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So, wanted to do a video for you. We've been talking a little bit about the gold standard here recently, and I found this speech coming out of the Federal Reserve dated April 2nd, 1936, Some Essentials of Monetary Stability. Listen to this. The pre-war theory of an automatic gold standard carried the implication, in its abstract logic at least, that the economic disturbance, wherever originating or whatever its nature, could be dissipated and corrected by the flow of gold. There was a sound core of truth in this view, but it also contained a dangerous suggestion that all a country had to do was to adopt the international standard and fold its hands in the confident expectation that the beneficent system would protect it from all economic ills. That there were shortcomings in the gold standard, as we know it in the past, no one now questions. But it was the gold standard. It was not the gold standard per se that failed us after the war. The world recovery was never soundly reestablished. The reparations, the reparation questions, despite all that was done to effect a settlement, refused to be settled. War debts remained a source of disturbance. The economic position of a number of countries of Central Europe was never really adjusted. The rates of stabilization of some countries, such as England, for instance, such as to require a greater economic readjustment in those countries than could be easily achieved with existing inflexibilities in those countries. America's new position in the world economy favored a flow of gold to this country, which weakened the position of a number of other countries and formed the basis for excessive speculation here. These and other economic causes for instability were back in the later financial disaster. They were responsible in a large measure for the tremendous volume of short-term funds washing about the money markets in the world in defiance of all the ordinary rules except the rule of fear. It was against this backdrop that the events of the years from 1931 to 1933 succeeded in generating an overpowering psychology of fear, which became in itself a disturbing element apart from its original causes. And then, let me see here. He goes on to talk about the fear here. He goes, "We shall never forget the first 3 days of March." So did you guys quite get what was going on there? So basically the world was slowing down, and they looked over at America and said, America's the number one place. And so they started speculating in America, right? Which caused this excessive, flow of money coming into the United States. Well, what ended up happening was that once you get to a speculative state where it bubbles, then people panic, right? Because they're like, oh crap, this isn't going to work either. And they start pulling their money out. Once people start pulling their money out and they see the drop, it's like a rush to the exit, right? Everybody's trying to get out at the same time. And that's essentially what happened there in March of 1933. And it says here, "We shall never forget the first 3 days of March in the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. On Wednesday, March 1st, the bank alone, we paid out 51 million of currency to our member banks. On March 2nd, it was 80 million. On March 3rd, it was 176 million. On the last day, March 3rd, we also lost 87 million through transfers of funds in other districts, and 78 million through gold exports and earmarking. In addition, the public crowded into our bank corridors to withdraw gold. In those 3 days, they carried off in bags, in suitcases, and in their pockets over $100 million in gold coin and certificates. The movement was cumulative. Each day was worse than the preceding one. This was fear which would wreck any sort of banking system. It was the situation which President Roosevelt must have had in mind when he said in his radio address to the nation at the end of the banking holiday in March, all we have to fear is fear itself. So yeah, it was like, people were, were panicking. They were getting out. And it's kind of crazy because I thought, at this point that the banking system was all of a sudden just kind of churned inside of a few days, but it wasn't. It really actually took the course of a couple of days, or not a couple of days, but over the course of a month. See, listen to here. It says, no one went through the banking crisis of February and March 1933, who went through the banking crisis of February and March of 1933 will ever forget the irresistible rush of panic through the country. On February 14th, the governor of Michigan declared a state bank holiday, and then in rapid succession, one state after another in different parts of the country took similar action until on Saturday, March 4th, practically every state in the union had closed its banks. In the period of about 3 weeks from February 9th to March 3rd, the people of America in fear had withdrawn approximately $1.7 billion in money from their banks, an amount which equaled about 35% of the total money in circulation in the country, even in the boom days of 1929. Isn't that crazy? So it actually took the course of 3 weeks, and it was like one by one these banks kind of went down, but it was very quickly. And then that's when they're like, oh crap, the whole banking system is shut down. We need to do something about this. All right. Anyway, I found that very interesting. I'm going to leave a link to this speech down in the description, and we're going to continue to talk a little bit more about this speech because there's some other stuff in there, but I thought that was a pretty good one for part 1. All right. Uneducated Economist. You all have a good morning.